Hello, everybody. I love that intro so much. It's so fun. Welcome to today's live stream. We're talking about building Gaussian splatting pipelines for spatial intelligence. I am joined by the fabulous Michael, and we are talking about some amazing things. But the reason we're talking about it is because there is a really cool release today. So we have our OpenUSD new version 26.03. It's officially live. So this release, it represents a massive collaboration milestone that was reached by Apple, Adobe, and NVIDIA. It formally transitions our Gaussian splatting from a fragmented custom plugin into an actual native USD standard by introducing the particle field schema directly into the core repository. What does that mean for your pipeline? Well, for the first time, you can mix traditional polygonal geometry and PBR materials directly with photoreal volumetric splats in one unified scene graph. We've utilized API schemas to prioritize composition over inheritance, ensuring the tech is future-proof and ready for complex simulation needs of tomorrow. You can check out the schema for yourself in the latest USD documentation or pull the ALab assets from the DPEL to see high-fidelity Gaussian splats rendering natively in USD View today. Amazing stuff. And we're not done talking about amazing stuff because Michael's here. Michael Rubloff is from radiancefields.com. Michael, can you tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on the live stream today. I'm really excited to be talking about the rapidly advancing world of lifelike 3D through things like Gaussian splatting. And just like the website suggests, radiancefields.com is a place where I've tried to centralize information surrounding the world of lifelike 3D reconstruction across a little bit over the last 3 years or so. And so I try and write daily about originally starting with like NeRFs, now moving more into Gaussian splatting, essentially just being able to serve as a resource for the larger community and industries at large to try and show all the exciting things that we can now do with Gaussian splatting.
Okay, you say Gaussian and I say Gaussian. Am I wrong? Are you right? Should I just say G-splats?
We could, choose a bunch of different ways. There's honestly so many different like nicknames now and ways to refer to it that we can do 3D GIS, we can do G-splats, you can do just splats. There's really, you have your option.
Okay, tomato, tomato. Got it. All right, are you ready? I'm going to throw your slide up here.
Sure. Yeah, let's go ahead. Right. Okay, awesome. So I am just going to go ahead and get started. And yeah, I am very, very excited to talk to you all about how we've gotten to Gaussian splatting, where it's being used, and some of the industries that have really begun to embrace lifelike 3D from normal 2D images. So with this in mind, I thought it would be helpful to start with more of like an overview as to like how we got there. And in order to do this, I'm actually gonna go way back into history and take a look at painting first as a primary representation of the world around us. And for a very long period of time in human history, the way that we accomplished this was through painting. And here is a painting that I really love from Leonardo da Vinci, accompanied with another quote from him as well, where basically he said, the first intention of a painter is to make a flat surface display a body as if modeled.
I don't think we can. Sorry, Mike, I don't think we can see it.
You can't?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah. Weird. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Did it go away? Okay.
It's not in like giant form.
Let's see. Perhaps then I should just.
Yeah, that looks a lot better. So we can read that amazing quote.
Yeah. So perhaps I'll just stay in this view. But yeah, so basically, the goal of painters is to create separation from what is otherwise a 2D plane. And for a very long time of human history, that was the pinnacle of our capability. And obviously, that changed with the invention of modern photography, and all of a sudden we had a way to get closer to a moment in time and actually experience and get to understand something. And that capability has continued to grow steadily in its own capabilities to the image on the right, which is of my dog, Frankie. We could see it taken from just a mobile phone. But as it turns out, this is not either the pinnacle of our capabilities as well. And we actually are now able to reconstruct very lifelike 3D reconstructions too. And so here is a capture actually from one of my very good friends, Gray Eterna, where he walked through a apartment and was able to reconstruct extraordinarily lifelike 3D using otherwise just normal 2D images. And so just this capability came into effect, I'd say, in 2020, and I'll start to go through the different timelines as to how this occurred. But as we'll be able to see very, very shortly, we're now at a point where we can take pictures and videos, which is a very accessible form of media that anyone can capture, and rapidly reconstruct them into these virtual 3D environments. And this is actually a quote that came from Aaron Lafond, who is a VP of graphics research at NVIDIA, as part of the keynote at SIGGRAPH 2025 just last year. And he is very much correct in that all we need now is a series of normal 2D images or video, and from this we are able to reconstruct very lifelike 3D. And we're going to start to take a look at some of the industries that have really understood this and become very excited about it. And like I said, this began in 2020 with the publication of a paper called NeRF, otherwise known as neural radiance fields. And we can see basically we are going to shoot a ray in through a given space and take samples along the ray there in order to get like view dependent color. So we're ingesting X, Y, and Z and view direction, and outputting RGB and density. And we can see too, here we have this nice Triceratops image, this nice 2D version of it, but it's actually not 2D either. It is actually a complete 3D reconstruction, as well as we can move this ball throughout the space. And we're actually, able to reconstruct what otherwise would look like 2D to us. And I have this other quote here from Mark Zuckerberg too, from I think back in like 2022 or 2023, and just kind of admitting the fidelity that NeRF is able to achieve. The problem with NeRF back then was that it was very slow to train, because we were doing so much of these calculations that it would take maybe like 24 hours to do one single reconstruction. But that very much changed in early 2022 with the publication of InstantNGP, otherwise known as Instant NeRF from NVIDIA. And this really opened the floodgates to both the research world and the consumer adoption of lifelike 3D. And as I mentioned, it came from the Thomas Muller and his team at NVIDIA. It was recognized for best paper at SIGGRAPH 2022. And it really dropped that reconstruction time from 24 hours plus to just a handful of seconds to a couple of minutes. And we started to really be able to let people adopt this technology. And it was actually awarded one of the most impactful inventions by Time Magazine in 2022. And Thomas actually followed that up in 2023 with another win for Neural Angelo. And one other final note on NeRFs before we move to splats is that they are capable of real-time rendering now through InstantNGP 2.0, but we will now focus on 3D Gaussian splatting, which we had published in late April of 2023 from co-first authors Bernard Kerbel and George Kopanis. It also won best paper at SIGGRAPH 2023, so the year following InstantNGP. And one fun fact that I like to cite here is it actually was the 19th most cited paper of 2023. In order to more properly ground that in terms of like what that means from a context perspective, Google's Gemini was number 17. So there's a tremendous amount of interest in Gaussian splatting immediately following its publication, and it's only continued to grow in its actual excitement for reasons that I will explain very shortly. And so just to clarify as well, the full paper title of Gaussian splatting is 3D Gaussian splatting for real-time radiance field rendering. It is a method to render a radiance field with real-time rates. And these actually are expanded to a lot of different devices, which I will go into in just a little bit. So here's a nice little metaphor that I like to use too about Gaussian splatting and how it actually works. Here is a painting from Jackson Pollock, who was known for dripping or throwing paints onto a 2D canvas. And we can kind of think of Gaussian splatting in a similar way, where instead of individual paint splotches going onto a 2D canvas, we're now throwing essentially these 3D ellipsoids, these 3D like footballs that can stretch across different lengths and sizes. And instead of having it look more like a random arrangement of splats on a 2D canvas, now all of a sudden we're able to reconstruct very lifelike and view-dependent color onto these canvases. And from this, we're able to layer, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands to several millions of these Gaussians to form very lifelike 3D that can render across real time across a very large amount of devices. And I also want to highlight this here is that while there are NeRFs and Gaussian splatting as the two most popular ways of reconstructing a radiance field, there's a whole bunch of research going into the world right now showing that we have access to lifelike 3D. Lifelike 3D is very much here, and we now have the capability of reconstructing it from a series of normal 2D images or videos. And so we're starting to see how these will actually begin to influence industries that use 2D as a way to visualize or derive information from a given scene or moment in time. These different radiance field representations, including Gaussian splatting, typically follow this same initial trajectory, whereby we are starting with capturing just normal 2D images or video. We are then going to feed it into something called a structure from motion pipeline, essentially asking a system to understand very precisely in a given 3D space where each camera is located. So actually like aligning, it's almost like the skeleton of these reconstructions. And from there, once we have all these poses and structure from motion data, we are then going to move into reconstruction, for which we'll start to take a look at some of the different pipelines that exist from a local perspective to train Gaussian splatting. One reason why Gaussian splatting has become inordinately popular is that any camera that can create a still image can create the data necessary for Gaussian splatting. So meaning the vast majority of people on Earth have the capability of, or have a device that can capture Gaussian splatting. So this can range from things like your smartphone. It can range from things like higher end mirrorless cameras. It will work with film cameras. It'll work with thermal cameras. 360 cameras have become increasingly popular because you're able to just ingest more information about a space in a smaller period of time. And an emerging set of cameras have been these SLAM-based cameras or SLAM-based scanners, whereby kind of like a flashlight as you walk around a space, typically they have multiple cameras built in, plus sometimes LiDAR, and you're able to very rapidly and very accurately reconstruct lifelike 3D. One thing that I'd like to call out here about all these different camera choices is that they love two things in particular. Gaussian splatting loves having sharp images, so really sharp and in focus frames, and having multi-view parallax. So being able to actually get better understanding about this scene itself. If you are looking at creating the data necessary for Gaussian splatting, these are the two biggest suggestions that I would give to you, where it makes a huge impact on the actual reconstructions. And smartphones are actually amazing capture devices for this purpose because they naturally have really deep depth of field, and they're so ubiquitous in our everyday life too. But that said, they could actually, actually, just to show you another quick example, just in case you didn't believe me, about radiance fields working with any camera. Here is a thermal image of a radiance field. We can see it does, in fact, reconstruct exactly as it was captured out in the world. But
yeah, it's very pretty.
Yeah, right. It's very cool that we have this now. And with smartphones, though, there is something that I think could be a little stronger with the creating the data necessary for Gaussian splatting, and that is being able to really utilize the phone's full capabilities, where your standard camera app only fires one of your lenses at a time, despite a lot of these devices having multiple lenses. So I've actually gone ahead and created a completely free to use capture app that will fire both the 0.5 and the 1x lens simultaneously, and also give you manual control over the individual shutter speeds and ISO too for the two lenses. So the hope is this will create the best data necessary or possible for Gaussian splatting, but also be completely pipeline agnostic, so that when we take a look at just a second in the different reconstruction options there are, you'd be able just to export and use it. So this would work with the local training options. This will work for cloud-based ones like Teleport or Luma, or even like Quidient. All of these would be completely compatible with this. And so I've actually started opening a test flight, and I put the QR code there if you're interested to download it. But
so cool.
Yes, yeah, I think it's real. I've been testing it quite a bit. It's helping a lot with getting very strong details. But another reason why you would get strong details from a reconstruction is, as I mentioned before, these splats love having sharp images. It's very necessary for reconstructions to have in focus frames. And that's because these radiance fields will reconstruct exactly what they see. So if you're introducing blur into these image sets, it's going to think that blur is what it should look like, and it's going to model that. And so it's much more important that you actually are culling and just making sure that the images that you're introducing into your reconstructions are sharp and in focus. And there's really nice libraries to do that. There is this open source repository called Sharp Frames, which is MIT licensed, and they have a Python CLI as well, where you can just drag and drop, and it will help you pull out the sharpest images for your data sets. It's also what I use for my reconstructions, and it's completely free, and you can find it on GitHub right there. So as we mentioned too, the second step of reconstruction is once we have a lot of sharp images that induce parallax, we then need to run it through structure from motion. And there are a couple standard options that we see out in the world today. The default option has been ColeMap, upon which most of this has been built upon. ColeMap is permissibly licensed, and it is, I would say, the most, it was a great option. Another one that I do want to highlight is actually a NVIDIA library called PyQSFM, which is a CUDA accelerated structure from motion library that is Apache 2 licensed, meaning that you could use it for commercial purposes. And this is also a much faster version of ColeMap. And so I would really suggest that people start to look into PyQSFM and the other library, just QSFM, as well for these purposes. When we take a look at some of these faster libraries, there also is Reality Scan from Epic Games, which was formerly called Reality Capture, in case you guys have used it in the past. They've renamed it to Reality Scan, and they've also set it so now that if you earn less than $1 million in revenue a year, it is now completely free to use, which is an amazing a choice that they made, and has made things really nice to go and be able to use permissibly. And the final option that people like to use is another one called Agisoft Metashape, and this is a paid offering where they have two different licenses. There's a standard and a professional one. The standard one lets you export to ColeMap format, which is mostly what you need, though the professional one lets you add on more scripts on top of that. So there's a bit more ways that you could do, like masking, and just make sure that the images that you are going to be sending to training are going to be the highest fidelity possible. And this example here on the right, we're actually going to see the finished version of this in a little bit. This is actually a higher profile example in the media and entertainment industry, and this is just the ColeMap run that they did on it. So we can now take a look at the local reconstruction options. And so once we have our structure from motion completed, there are a ton of great ways that you can actually go ahead and start processing your splats or reconstructions. The first one that I want to highlight is FVDB, which is a open source Apache 2 licensed library from NVIDIA, where there are two main components to FVDB. There is FVDB Core, and then within there is also FVDB Reality Capture, which is also abbreviated as FROGS. And from this, it is a very, very fast and very scalable repository offered from NVIDIA, and kind of following along with the GitHub pull request. There's a lot of activity there, and so it seems like there's a lot of excitement around this. And in the same vein, we saw last year the unveiling of the NuRec library from NVIDIA as well, and so it's another great way to actually reconstruct very lifelike 3D, and in part with that is 3D-GRUT, which stands for 3D Gaussian Ray Tracing and 3D Gaussian Unscented Transform, which is also Apache 2 licensed. And so those two libraries individually are very powerful and enable very interesting things. Specifically, the Unscented Transform, I think, deserves a lot more credit for what it actually enables developers to do. It gives you the benefits of complex secondary lighting effects that you might find with ray tracing, for instance, but still lets you rasterize the actual the final reconstruction. So you're still getting the really fast rendering rates with essentially 3D Gaussians operating as the general primitive. And it is Apache 2 licensed. It's available in that repository, though you could also find it within GSplat, which is also a Apache 2 licensed repository that came originally from Nerf Studio, which is a collection of originally Berkeley students who put together that repository, though the author of GSplat, Rulong Li, is also now working at NVIDIA. And here's just like a nice little visualization of their, I guess, capabilities. One thing I also would like to draw some attention to is there's actually this visualization library called VK Gaussian Splatting, which comes also from the NVIDIA team. And it is Apache 2 license, And this is I would say like a visualization test bed where you can actually start to iterate and understand as you start to pull apart the different pipeline pieces of Gaussian splatting and the unscented transform, how it affects the actual performance and quality and what the individual trade-offs by changing things out are. And it's powered using the Vulkan API. So I would really recommend that people and developers specifically check out this library. It's definitely, I think can do some pretty handy tools for developers to create stronger reconstructions.
Yeah. I brought Katie from backstage because we heard the word NuRec, and I was like, okay, Katie. Okay,
I was about to say you summoned me with the magic word.
Yeah, I summoned you. So,
say NuRec 3 times fast, I will appear.
NuRec. There, I got so many questions at CES, especially on the show floor, like, what is NuRec? What is it capable of doing? How does it relate to what we're talking about with Gaussian splats? Is that something you can answer for us?
I can, Michael, if you don't mind if I steal the screen.
Yeah, go for it.
Second. Okay, share screen. All right, is that showing up?
There you go.
Okay, yeah, so as Michael mentioned, we have a variety of research work that we've open sourced around 3D Gaussian splatting, a number of libraries and models, but we've also kind of created this production level pipeline called NuRec for 3D Gaussian splatting. And specifically what NuRec is a set of technologies that includes reconstruction libraries that allow you to reconstruct the scene in 3D Gaussians. Then we have a rendering API built on 3D GRUT, as Michael was talking about, that allows you to render with ray tracing as well as with the efficiency of Gaussian splatting. And then it also includes these what we call generative enhancement models, which then can improve the quality of your reconstruction using our existing World Foundation models like NVIDIA Cosmos. So Fixer is openly available right now on Hugging Face. You can download it, you can integrate it with pipelines outside of NuRec. Our goal is to really make this technology as accessible and easy to use because we are super excited about it. And we want to make sure that everyone is able to kind of really tap into the potential of what 3D Gaussian splatting can do. We've specifically been using it for physical AI simulation. Autonomous vehicle development has kind of been the tip of the arrow for this, given the need for kind of accurate environment reconstruction for simulation. And it's really awesome because we can take our existing data from the car, reconstruct it using NuRec, and then create these variations. So we can, slow down the car ahead. We can take away the car ahead. We can move the vehicle over 6 inches, kind of give all of those variations that we need to really thoroughly test and evaluate the self-driving policy. We also use it for robotics. We can kind of build these environments in IsaacSim to test the robot. And, we can get super accurate. We can start to reconstruct the physics and the lighting to really make it easy to bring in the environments the robots will be operating in into simulation. And then as well, I believe Michael mentioned our FVDB libraries, which then allow us to take super large scale spatial data, compress it, and then reconstruct it with 3D Gaussian splatting. So, we can recreate this entire airport scene to then test our cute little spot robot. So, the field is quickly developing, and we're building libraries and tools and models for all sorts of applications and kind of releasing them as fast as we can. And NuRec is sort of our main vehicle for doing so. We will have a lot of really exciting updates for GTC, so definitely stay tuned. I think we should have more information on that at the end. But with that, I will hand it back to Michael now that my TED Talk is done.
Thank you, Katie. That was so informative. I think that helps answer a lot of questions. And then It just goes to show there's so many different options now available for taking like these Gaussian splats and reconstructing your data with just images. So really cool to see. I'm gonna take your screen off and I'm gonna put Michael back up here.
Okay. And I'm
Katie, do you want to hang out? Nope.
I'm going to quietly exit as we prepare for GTC. We have some things to do, but it was great to see you, Michael. Thank you for having me virtually. I will see you all later.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, so building on top of what Katie just said too, one of the things that I should have highlighted about 3D Gaussian's unscented transform is that while Gaussian splatting assumes that you have a perfect pinhole sensor, the unscented transform actually expands that to let you no longer need that. So you can actually put in, say, like fisheye lenses. You can use more typical cameras that are used in robotics situations too, which adds a very nice flexibility to being able to reconstruct just more of the world's data. But as it turns out, this library also does enable you to export and convert to USDZ for use in both Omniverse and Isaac Sim. And there's actually a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can convert it with a single line of code. Say if you have a actual PLY, it doesn't need to even be trained with the unscented transformer. It can ingest just a normal trained PLY and then convert to USDZ. But it can also be enabled in the actual training portion of the reconstruction from just a single flag that you have highlighted at the bottom there of just export equals true. One other call out too is we mentioned the SLAM-based scanners a little bit earlier. XGrids is a leading company in that regard. And if you capture with their devices, they also let you export directly to USDZ as well for more of these simulation-based tasks as well. But actually, this had to revisit this earlier today because there actually is a update from the library as of today, where they've now added the capability to add a mesh in addition to this USDZ file within the reconstruction. So now we can convert to USDZ and I believe or PLY as well, which just came out today. So if you go to the repository for 3D GRUT, you will see it now being there reflected in the README, and we can now pull in more information about, or we can now actually generate meshes to then be used in Isaac Sim or Omniverse, which is very, very exciting for us because we're actually creating these collisions now, and we also can simultaneously set them to be invisible too, depending on what we're working on. So that is a brand new update as of just a couple of hours ago. I had to quickly add this slide in, but I'm really excited to see it in existence now, and it's gonna hopefully make things go a bit faster as well, and make developers' lives a whole lot easier too. So yeah, it's definitely a big step forwards.
Cool. Would you be able to zoom into your slides a little bit so we can read some of this text a little bit better? Yes. Or let's see. Or maybe if you can go into slideshow mode.
Yeah, are you able I just went to slideshow mode right here, but is it reflected in the screen?
No, on my end, it still looks like we can see like, oh, there we go. That looks a lot better.
Okay. Just let me know if you have any questions when I go like this. I can't see the question log, but I definitely, I will answer anything as it comes up.
Sure.
So with all of this in mind, there's been a lot of excitement about Gaussian splatting across various industries, but also across various standard groups too. So as Katie, or as we were just taking a look earlier, with OpenUSD, it has now come into version 26.03 of OpenUSD. That's where you can find the newest release. But the Kronos group has also been working to ship a release candidate for KHR Gaussian splatting, which is bringing Gaussian splatting compatibility to GLTF, which is incredibly exciting for people that work with GLTF. And so, hopefully we will see the full ratification later this spring as well, which is really exciting to see. And finally, the other group that I want to call out here is actually the MPEG Association, where they are also very excited about Gaussian splatting. and the role that lifelike 3D might play in terms of delivering it to people from a video-based experience. So not a lot of people even know that both MPEG and JPEG have their own association, but they are both very interested in the world of Gaussian splatting, and there are very active conversations going on right now in terms of really aligning and building this strong foundation to make it into a more interoperable future across all of these different industries and applications, where we're really starting to see direct investment and excitement from the foundational level, which for me is a great indicator for this technology's promise. When we take a look at where we're building on top of, where some of these newer capabilities are, there's actually a very recent paper called PPISP, also from NVIDIA, where it stands for physically plausible image signal processing for radiance field reconstruction. And we can see the before and after here. In a lot of ways, it's almost like doing exposure compensation. There was a previous method called bilateral guided radiance field processing. This actually benchmarks a bit more favorably compared to that. And we can see a lot more detail and exposure optimization occurring now with these larger 3D environments. And it's been actually quickly accepted into quite a few different reconstruction platforms, including 3D GRUT as well. So you can actually find it contained in there. But it is permissively licensed, and you can go ahead and find the full code here for people to go and try it out for yourself. Some other really recent work that I wanted to quickly touch on is actually this one called Diffusion Harmonizer. And as Katie was just showing, like the Fixer, for instance, and being able to really make things align properly in terms of the lighting and in closing what is known as like this domain gap in robotics and physical AI. This is another step forwards in that direction, where this was just announced, I think, at the beginning of this week, and will be shown at CVPR this year, so just in a couple of months, but is another really big step forwards to aligning everything and making even more lifelike 3D thanks to diffusion as well. One other similar paper to this is another one that came out at the beginning of this week called Artifixer. And we can see this is mainly going to be used from very sparse image data sets. So there aren't always times where we have the luxury of fully capturing a space for what otherwise it might require. And so we can see this is a capture from 3 views, and we can see on the top left of what a 3D Gaussian unscented transform would perform with just 3 images and a couple of other methods. But now with this newest method, we can see there is significantly higher fidelity from just a very sparse amount of input images. So we're getting much closer to being able to need even less of the references to build on top of, which is a very, very exciting new capability. And so this paper and the paper just before, the code is not yet out. It was just published this week, but hopefully we will see more soon about these 2 methods from the various NVIDIA teams. And moving forwards. So I know I kind of spent a bit of time on that initial portion, but let's actually now start to take a look at where is Gaussian splatting popping up across industries. And on the left here, I've outlined some of the ones that I've begun to see its adoption, though we're going to focus on 2 in particular today. We're going to focus on the AEC and Geospatial world, and we're going to focus on the media and entertainment industry. But I do want to be very direct with this and say that any industry that currently uses 2D in some capacity, I believe, will ultimately end up creating their work in full 3D, whether that is statically or dynamically. I am seeing it actually occur right now in parallel across these industries located here. But I think as this year goes on, it's going to be a bit more. There's going to be a bit more marketing that shows the level of adoption across the world right now. So it's definitely beginning here in AEC. And I just actually returned from Geo Week just about like a week ago. And there was an immense amount of interest in Gaussian splatting across the construction world. And part of the reason why this is that we are getting these real-time visualizations with, as we can plainly communicate, very lifelike 3D reconstruction here. And it's allowing these construction teams to actually increase their collaboration, where these architects, and engineers and the actual contractors themselves are able to interact with the same lifelike 3D version of a location in the physical world. And it's allowing them to identify potential issues much earlier than they otherwise would. And as we'll get into in the geospatial application, we're starting to really be able to understand what a given space looks like. And one of the ways I've seen people do this in the AEC industry is that they're using it as a way to get better stakeholder buy-in, stakeholder management, where they can very effectively communicate the state of progress, the surrounding neighborhood of a location, and offer these very strong virtual walkthroughs for more buy-in. Some of the ways that people are also doing it, and I have quite a few examples here from Ben Stocker over at Skender, and we can see the existing conditions of an actual location. And traditionally, they were accomplishing this either through a series of 360 images or potentially even photogrammetry. But there's actually significantly more advantages to doing this using Gaussian splatting, because we get a very lifelike preview of what's actually occurring at that location at a given moment in time. And it's much more distributed. It's much more easy to distribute across the internet to people too, where you're just sending them a URL that can be opened across a variety of devices, including smartphones, which is making things much more transferable and actually speeding up their work. This is one of my favorite examples here, and it's actually the featured image for this session. And it's giving people a better understanding, almost like a 4D time lapse, as to like how the construction site was progressing. And so we're able to actually align these two PLYs, or these two splats essentially on top of one another, and be able to scrub through an individual or a location over a given period of time. And so this is actually being empowered from a platform called Godzilla Pro, and was also captured for Ben Stocker from Skender using an XGrids device, so another SLAM-based scanner. But it gives us a really nice understanding of what actually occurred at this location and what information, depending on who I am, do I need to pull from this information. So if I am, like an MEP engineer, or if I'm coming to do maintenance on the location, if I can actually peel back the layers of the construction and understand very intimately what was built there, there is a tremendous amount of value and efficiency that can be realized from this. And it's actually being used in that way beginning today. What's also very nice, as I mentioned, is that we can have a bunch of general progress through here. And you can see, it's just a complete reconstruction. And what I think is really cool about this capture in particular is that it looks totally empty, but this was actually captured on a full day of construction. And we're already able, you can kind of see like the ghosts and artifacts of individual people. But for the most part, you don't see the people that were remaining here. And so we're really able to capture efficiently and without disturbing the actual construction pipeline either. We're able just to go in and begin actually documenting the world around us. One other example that I really like here, this one's a bit more complex that Ben captured, but we can see the level of details and let people just continue to inspect. And what I want to highlight is that these captures did not take him like a day or even an hour to capture. These were all being done in like sub 15 minutes, which is a really great benchmark to actually be hitting here at this point in time. And it's only going to continue to get faster. And it's allowing him rather to measure. And I'll get into measurement in just a little bit, because I do have something that I think is very exciting that came out of GeoWeek to talk about with splats and their capabilities. And it's just, again, very easy for them to distribute across the entire team. And I think I will continue to kind of move through these to get to other examples. But again, even for complex locations like this room here, this was being done in less than 15 minutes for him. And he is able just to passively walk through and capture an extreme amount of detail and then distribute to whatever team member needs to actually look at some piece of information.
That scene is so crazy. You showed that before when we were dry running this, and it gave me anxiety. And I see it again, and I'm still like, look how much detail that is. And you can just get lost in there.
Yeah,
So cool.
I was chatting with him just to confirm. I was like, just to confirm, this took you like how long? And he was like, 15 minutes for
Wow.
this room. And it's just wild, where we are today, and how much further to the ceiling is for this technology. But
and you can just fly through these scenes with like WASD keys, right?
Yeah, yep, exactly. You could map it depending on the viewer that you're using for this, WSD or arrows or just like your mouse. It just depends on the individual viewers and how they have it set up.
Cool.
But yeah, one huge industry that is finding extreme value in Gaussian splatting is the geospatial world. And as we can see, historically, technologies like photogrammetry have had these fundamental limits when it comes to representing thin structures or highly reflective surfaces or foliage and vegetation. And now all of a sudden, this industry is realizing that without needing to recapture or throw away all of their existing data, they can simply reprocess. And from this, because splats love the same input data and actually are a little bit more forgiving than photogrammetry, they have access to large volumes of existing data that can scale really nicely. And this technology is also now capable of being geo-referenced. And the example that I mentioned just a couple slides ago is that now, as of GeoWeek, Esri announced that they have the capability of getting survey grade measurements directly from the splats. And so now we are able to get very accurate measurements from Gaussian splatting directly. So it represents a very exciting direction for the future that I think will take a bit of time to kind of like fully propagate in terms of like how impactful that capability is. But what's very nice about Gaussian splatting is that you can still run photogrammetry in parallel.
I like that you answered that, because someone actually asked earlier on in the stream when you were showing the resources, was like, how accurate are these reconstructed 3D scenes? What is the error of this reconstruction?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, you know, like centimeter is totally viable prior to Esri's announcement, though, you know, they were pretty direct at GeoWeek saying that it's like now survey grade and can be done from the splat itself. And that seems like it's going to be coming a little bit later in the year, but, you know, it's been validated that it is, you know, feasible, and it's on its way. So it's very exciting.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then another question that we might be able to answer right now too is, you said 15 minutes for capture. Do you know if they were capturing with a phone, a 360 camera, or someone asked if it was with an X-Grid camera?
Yeah, so all of the examples contained through here were all X-Grids devices. So they have a range of different products depending on what your end goal is. If you want pure visualization, they offer a relatively low-priced scanner called the Portal Cam, which retails for about $5,000 US, and it ranges all the way up to their top-end device, which is the L2 Pro currently. And that is what he is using for the majority of the captures that we see here. We're done with the L2 Pro.
Cool.
Yeah. And what's also very exciting to see is, in addition to Esri, we're seeing industry momentum really can start to accelerate, where other companies like Pix4D and, you know, Cesium, which was acquired by Bentley Systems, and Esri have all introduced Gaussian splatting capabilities. And Esri actually just announced a JavaScript SDK for Gaussian splatting, and they just posted about it like an hour or two ago. So if you go to their LinkedIn, you'll find it straight away. But they have a bunch of very large scale examples rendering in your browser that you can kind of play around with. And, you know, they have it on full city scale at this point, which is also very exciting to see. To that point, actually, here is an example of something that might have been traditionally a little bit more difficult to represent the level of detail in terms of like the thin structures. And here is Empower Stadium in Denver, which is where the Denver Broncos play. And we can see how close we can continue to get, but we can also see the thin structures and level of detail that can accurately be represented from these spaces. So it's one that I like to just like show as just like, you know, it's very tempting to think that this technology can only get so large in terms of the pure space that it represents, but it's actually now been proven that there actually is no limit on how large that these are going to get. Here's a larger example too of an entire district of a city that Esri has reconstructed, and we get a little bit more information about the physical space of which something occurred. And for the geospatial industry, this is huge because, you know, for them, they're able to understand information a lot more intimately about a specific moment in time, and then use that information to actually make better decisions. And in the face of things like natural disasters or places where really understanding a location, you know, this information is very, very critical to them, and it's just all of a sudden been, you know, enabled from Gaussian splatting. And so we can see the thin bars from both the beams and the crane. But there's also a lot more that we can do with Gaussian splatting than just, you know, render and see the lifelike 3D. We actually have the capability of doing this labeling and actually scene understanding as well. So here are a bunch of examples from XGrids where this, I think, will be coming sometime soon from their team, where they have the capability of being able to both like segment and provide some level of scene understanding for these given spaces. And it will work for indoors, it will work for construction sites, it works for outdoors like vegetation. And we can start to get a sense as to like how this could truly help support more physical AI applications out in the world, with the base input being 2D images and reconstructing really lifelike 3D from that. So with this all in mind, I think it's time to move to media and entertainment, which has been one other really large recipient of Gaussian splatting, or large evangelist. And so if you remember from a little bit earlier in the presentation, when I showed that Colmap, I guess, view of the GUI, here is actually the finished product, which is a reconstruction of the Imperial Palace in Dune Prophecy from HBO. And we can see it in the Super Splat viewer. It is just making up of millions of splats. I think it's something like 18 million splats or so that make up this scene. And yeah, it was a tool that they leveraged in the I think the first season of Dune Prophecy. But here's another fun quote that I like to reference from James Cameron at the most recent Meta Connect, where he was pretty explicit in saying that every feed that we will be receiving as people, whether that's sports or social media, it should all be really in 3D. I mean, this is how we actually experience the world around us. There's not a reason anymore why we can't actually create that. A lot of this now is more on us as like the consumers and as developers to go and actually build this out for ourselves and for the communities around us. But I think that sooner than later, this quote will seem very obvious in hindsight to people, which I'm very much looking forward to. So with this in mind, some of the places that we're seeing Gaussian splatting in media entertainment has been for location scouting. So here is my friend Barney from District Cinema walking through a space. Also, he's using another XGrids device to go and capture a larger area and being able to reconstruct it with very lifelike 3D yet again, and then use this information to actually go ahead and make sets for actual like pre-visualization, to place these set pieces and be able to actually simulate the cameras and simulate the lighting, and being able to actually get a much more intimate understanding of the place that you will be filming at before you actually need to be committing to getting like the licensing fees or pulling an entire crew to a location. We're able to get so much further already in the media and entertainment industry using Gaussian splatting than we have ever been before, which is very, very exciting to see. And there are quite a few high budget projects that are currently in production using Gaussian splatting. The problem with like the media and entertainment industry is that there's such a long lead time to when things release that things began happening in 2023 and we're only seeing it now or in the last couple of months. But here's another example from Valinga. We're just kind of hammer home the point of being able to actually do better pre-visualization, where we can go ahead and using splats, we can go and place these virtual characters. We can simulate the cameras. We can measure the distance for everything. We actually have the tools to really supercharge these production workflows for teams ranging from, independent filmmakers to students to the full top tier of the box office. All of this is now possible as of today. And the final one that we can take a look at is virtual production. So kind of combining all of these together and now saying, okay, let's go ahead and we'll rent an LED volume. We'll put the splat, which you can see directly behind the golf cart on a LED volume, and we'll film as we would for a traditional virtual production purpose. And so this is a company called Pixelmondo out of Toronto that they actually have their own scanning rig called a Tori. And they have been reconstructing just Gaussian splatting and putting very, very high fidelity splats onto LED volumes that are being used in productions. So all of this is also to say that Gaussian splatting has been quickly embraced by existing software stacks in the world. You may recognize quite a few of the logos contained on here. I've been trying to track all the continual support of Gaussian splatting in the world. So I have an interactive menu that can direct you to where you can find either the plugins or the native support for Gaussian splatting, of which some of the really exciting examples was just this week, actually, Nuke from Foundry added native support to Gaussian splatting, which is a industry standard compositing tool. And I think that's going to very dramatically empower filmmakers to really leverage the full capabilities of Gaussian splatting out in the world. Some other cool platforms I'd like to highlight is Octane Render, just to the right of it, who is actually doing full path tracing of Gaussian splatting too, which is creating just super lifelike and very aesthetically pleasing splats too. And so hopefully some of these that we see here, while they're only supported by third-party plugins, I think it's very likely that multiple additional platforms on this list will have native support by the end of this year, which I'm very looking forward to as well. So with kind of keeping this all in mind, here are the places that have already been using Gaussian splatting in the media and entertainment world so far, from different, pieces of IP. So ranging from Tron Ares had a splat in it. Jurassic World Rebirth actually used Gaussian splatting as a pre-visualization tool, so their director could actually go ahead and get a better preview, similar to the Valinga example that I showed earlier. Superman I'll get to in just a second. And what's not really known yet is if you're a fan of Sinners, they actually use Gaussian splatting heavily in the twin reconstruction of Michael B. Jordan. And this has a really, yeah.
I love that movie so much. Ryan Coogler is a phenomenal genius. That whole movie is just like mind-blowing. And now to learn that they're using Gaussian splatting, I love it.
Yeah, so they had created this thing called a Halo rig, which essentially was 10 Insta360 action cams. And from this, they filmed, the performances, and then they were actually able to train a avatar powered by Gaussian splatting to reconstruct him. But it's not very much known yet that that's what they use, but it is. Wow. Yeah, and I'll touch on Ironheart in just a second. But other examples too that we've seen, the Weather Channel uses Gaussian splatting for something called flood effects, for which they actually won an Emmy for, and it is to simulate how flooding would affect local neighborhoods, where they fly a drone and then they can simulate neighborhoods to more tangibly demonstrate to the residents why these situations are so dangerous for people. But
they use that where I live.
Really? Oh,
I see that all the time.
Yeah, it's Gaussian splatting. If you look very closely, you can see the splats, or at least historically you could. And there's also been a huge adoption in the world of musical artists using these different radiance field representations. And this one I have radiance fields because a lot of these examples were actually using NeRF, though the most recent example would be from A$AP Rocky and Perfume. And we'll get to A$AP Rocky shortly. But there's also been a lot of larger brands and entities that are using different representations. And most recently, if you were watching the 2026 Winter Olympics, depending on the sport, there were splats that were used in hockey and figure skating and ski jumping. And we're going to see more coverage of the Winter Olympics using splats probably within the next 2 weeks or so as some of these things get summarized. But yeah, all of these brands have embraced the different forms of lifelike 3D so far. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot more that's currently in the works right now that unfortunately can't be discussed yet until they released. This is an example that actually just came out about an hour ago. And so I threw this at the very last minute, but ILM just put out an article about how they used NeRF Studio back in 2023, I believe, for the 2025 series Ironheart. It is on the ILM's website right now. So if you're interested in checking out how they used NeRF Studio, I would definitely recommend reading it. And again, this is another example. They did this in 2023. It didn't come out until, literally March 4th, 2026, which is today. But with these examples, here's my friend Henry with a nice 2D video of him making some funny faces. And we can see that it looks like a really nice 2D video. But as it turns out, this actually is not 2D reconstruction or 2D at all. It's actually full dynamic 3D reconstructions too. And we get a sense as to how strong the visual fidelity of dynamic Gaussian splatting, otherwise referred to occasionally as 4D GIS, is. And we can see the level of fidelity that we can achieve today using dynamic Gaussian splatting. And basically the way that we're doing this is we're feeding a bunch of multi-view images. Here's an example of me where we are just capturing a ton of different perspectives all around me at the same exact moment. And from this, we can reconstruct very lifelike 3D, where this is now the actual reconstructed portion of this. And this is complete, dynamic 3D. Yet again, this is not 2D in any capacity. And in case you're interested in actually trying this out for yourself, I've actually open sourced the data set of myself. And so it's a little bit over 300,000 images of me. But in case that you also don't want to reprocess everything yourself, we've also open sourced the actual Colmap files in addition to the 1800 trained PLYs that actually resulted in this reconstruction. So if you're interested in actually trying out any of this, you can go to this GitHub repository and request access to the data set. So hopefully, this will inspire developers to actually have access to strong data that can be, really experimented with.
I wonder how many people can say there's 3,000 images of them out there. Like if you add up like all the images from when you're a baby to your middle adulthood, I don't think it would get to 3,000.
Yeah, it's crazy because this was captured over about a 20-second period. And in like 20 seconds, more images of me were created than in the entirety of my life combined. But, this I think is just the general progression of technology, right? Where it's just now we just need to reset our expectations a little bit about, what makes up the world around us or how we can represent and interact with the world. But yeah, it's crazy. It's something like 11,000 images a second that they captured. So as I mentioned Superman from earlier and combining dynamic 3D, as it turns out, every single shot of Superman's parents in this movie are dynamic 3D reconstructions. All of them are dynamic Gaussian splatting. And you can see that you cannot tell as an audience member that they are not 2D. It's already crossed that threshold, which is really exciting to see, and was also captured by Infinite Realities as well. So that the same company. And so we can see that we have access to static access to static Gaussian splatting, which is more akin to photography. And then we have dynamic Gaussian splatting, which is otherwise known as 4D Gaussian splatting, which is more akin to video. And the reason why they went ahead and did this, as opposed to doing a traditional digidouble, is I was able to speak to the Framestore team who were tasked with processing this, but it actually gave them significantly more freedom creatively, where they actually captured the entire performance, up front between the two actors. The director sat in, I think, via like Zoom and just oversaw the actual shoot. And once they had everything captured, they actually, quote unquote, filmed it in post, which is a weird concept to think of. But they were able to better contemplate, like, what's the best actual camera angle for this scene? What's the best way to actually convey this message? And they were able to reshoot without actually reshooting. And in the end, it ended up saving them a ton of money and time, as opposed to doing a full digidouble and like modeling their hair and all like these fine details. They're able just to capture everything up front. This is another really recent example, and it is from A$AP Rocky's music video called Helicopter. And if you see all the people that are contained in this video, pretty much all of them are dynamic Gaussian splatting as well. And there's a bunch of crazy camera moves at the beginning, and then it kind of will stabilize. But there's a ton of dynamic Gaussian splatting that's contained inside of this. And A$AP Rocky apparently is a big fan of general radiance fields, because this is not the first time he's used a radiance field representation in a music video. He actually, if you look closely at some of his prior ones, he's used instant NGP in the past too, which is really cool to see an artist embrace super lifelike dynamic 3D. When I mentioned the James Cameron example from earlier, you mentioned sports, and as it turns out, there's also the complete capability of it's locking the audio for some reason. So there's basically a little audio, but basically sports, same thing, can also be reconstructed. And so this view is ridiculous. I'm not totally sure how this is possible still yet, though, you know, I have spoken to their team. This is from a company called Arcturus, and while it's not yet live, the capabilities to enjoy sports in real time, this is a direction that I think we're pretty rapidly heading towards.
Oh, wow. I don't know if I want to see that in 3D. Watching those slab videos is hard enough.
Yeah, right. It's weird because we've not really ever like had the capability to even like go right up to someone, in like a sports match or something. But it's exciting that we'll have like the creative freedom to I don't know, get closer to the actual moment in time and literally step into the batter's box in like the case of baseball. And I'm really looking forward to this being like a fully available technology for us.
It reminds me of getting an HD TV for the first time and seeing like the high amount of detail on like a person's skin, and you're watching TV and you're like, I can't believe that I can see that much detail on somebody. And the next step is going to be, I can't believe that I can actually like feel like I'm in the room with this person.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like another step forwards. It just happens to be a very large one, where we're really like advancing quickly. Here's another example too from YouTube, where this is a YouTuber named Tim from a channel called MediaStorm, and you can see too, being able. This is also dynamic Gaussian splatting, where you can see the camera rig behind him. But this is from a company called 4DV AI. And it's just wild that this I think it's very exciting to me to see this. So moving a little bit faster as well. There's also we can see in the last example there was a ton of cameras surrounding him. There's definitely been a lot of progress to cutting down the number of cameras, where this is actually down to 4 cameras, and then using generative models on top of it to aid the fidelity. And so, this is another area of research I'm really looking forward to seeing advance. Some other examples too from some companies. There is Netflix's Eyeline Studios, which has a method called DEGS. It stands for Detailed Enhanced Gaussian Splatting. They have this amazing studio that you can see right there with all these very expensive cameras surrounding it, but we can composite and just create very lifelike dynamic 3D. And there's also NVIDIA's Queen, which is coming from the Amri lab, and that is a open source method too. So if you go to their GitHub page, you would be able to access the code for Queen. There's also the examples from Apple, which Apple has actually confirmed that their personas for the Vision Pro are powered using Gaussian splatting avatars. And this is kind of more akin to when I was talking about Sinners from just a little bit earlier. You could imagine something very similar from a methodology standpoint. And it's very interesting that the iPhone 17 Pro has chosen to support Genlock. And we'll see what that entails or implies for people late, I imagine sooner than later.
So they Gaussian splat the tongue that they make up for you too? Because when you get your face scanned in the Apple Vision Pro, you don't have to show your tongue, but then like once it creates your avatar, if you were to stick your tongue out, there's a tongue that exists. Is that a Gaussian splat tongue?
It must be, I suppose. Yeah, it's a good question. We should try and find that out actually on how they determine that. But yeah, it's really, really cool. And you can see, the relighting capabilities as well from like Meta, from their Kodak Avatar program. And, there's definitely a lot of signals that these larger businesses are very excited about dynamic Gaussian splatting being out in the world for people. And so, yeah, just a general thought about like where it could be headed. I think that anytime you currently see video, will be a use case for it. And hopefully it continues to bring people closer to one another and individual moments in time. And, it would not surprise me to see even more specialized hardware just be released and be developed specifically for dynamic Gaussian splatting. And one other quick note that I want to highlight here, going back to the world of Omniverse, is that Evercoast has actually been experimenting quite a bit with bringing 4D splats into Omniverse to help with some of these training for physical AI. And I think that we, definitely in light of the most recent 3D GRUT updates today and bringing in like the mesh capabilities, I'd be very curious to see how that helps enable them at this point now. I think that will probably aid them quite a bit in terms of generating these collisions and making things a bit more accurate for these robotic systems.
Yeah, that's good that you bring that up, because there's been a few questions in the chat, like how can Gaussian splatting pipelines integrate with OpenUSD-based digital twins for industrial environments such as ports and factories? And I'm sure robotics is part of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And this is where, reconstructing with, or at least converting with the 3D GRUT library to send to USDZ, I think is enabling these various like industrial applications to leverage, simulation, or pairing it with NuRec, for instance, to let them actually simulate. So Katie touched on it a bit earlier, but I was thinking that as just like a transition period, some of the other places that we are seeing this work being done today with Gaussian splatting is, of course, in autonomous vehicle simulation, where we are ingesting, information about the physical world and turning that very quickly into very lifelike static and dynamic 3D reconstructions using things like NuRec, for instance. And here's just a comparison across the different radiance field representations too that have been reconstructed using a whole bunch of different radiance fields. This is from earlier this year at CES. There was the AlpaMayo library that was announced, and underneath that there is also AlpaSim, which is using 3D Gaussian unscented transform too. And we get a sense as to the fidelity and being able to close this domain gap to create very lifelike dynamic 3D reconstructions that can be simulated to actually help close the long tail of potential outcomes in the world. Here is an example from, I believe, SIGGRAPH, where NVIDIA started to show as well some of these different simulation capabilities using NuRec, where we're just inserting these virtual cars into these very lifelike reconstructions. And then I also want to talk about very quickly the size of scale that this can be enabled. So this is actually from a company called Third Dimension AI, and they have a neural simulator called SuperSim. And in order to, really meet the data requirements necessary to understand and simulate, we're going to need to be able to continue to scale it to, billions or trillions of miles that have been driven. And Gaussian splatting is allowing us to create that volume of scenarios significantly faster than if we were to try and hand model any of this. And what's really cool too is that these are all full 4D reconstructions, so they're not static. They have full motion and time enveloped in them. So it's a very cool company. And here's one other example from Parallel Domain, just to kind of show that there are very lifelike worlds that are being created using Gaussian splatting. And this is where something like the diffusion harmonizer, I think, would come in handy really nicely to really just make everything blend in to one another and fit more lifelike capabilities into a scene. I have a couple examples showing how lifelike we can get in terms of like what we're talking about here. The team at Meta, this is an engineer named Vasu's apartment. And we get just really, really lifelike 3D. This is actually a NERF method, but we have such capabilities to explore the dynamic range of the scene to really underexpose, or then really raise up the highlights as well to get some level of information about the physical world. And here are just a couple scenes from a creator named Christoph Schindler. And these are all splats. Even though it looks totally photoreal, these are kind of like to give you like a sense as to how lifelike we're talking from just normal 2D images from which he captured with a single Sony camera. And perhaps while it plays, are there any other questions that I could touch on?
Yeah, there's lots of different questions that we can answer. One that I thought was interesting, maybe you know this, how to locally set this using mobile phones. Do you recommend any tutorials that someone could check out?
How to like locally set?
Yeah, like how to do this with mobile phones. How do you capture?
Okay. Well, I would. So there are a few apps that I would recommend. There is starting out with just your base camera app. That is already a great option. I actually am rolling out like test flight access to an app that I've been developing that will let you fire both shutters, the 0.5 and the 1x simultaneously. It's completely free and gives you control over shutter speed too, so you can get hopefully sharper images. So I would recommend that. So if you would want to send me a DM, I can send you access to the test flight for it.
And then another question was, there was a moment in the stream earlier when you were showing like, it looked like tessellated models. Someone was asking if they were generated from Gaussian splatting. I'm not sure if we can answer this. I
probably would need to know what slide or
I think it was when we were showing the bench. The benches that were, it was only a few different images of the park bench.
Okay. Yes, that one also I would have to get back to you on. That one is probably from the Artifixer. And so that one is like brand new. So I honestly have not had a chance to go through it yet in terms of knowing what.
And then there was tons of questions about doing this in large industrial environments.
Sure.
Someone wants to know if like we can use 3D GS to monitor operational safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely can. This is, I think, actually one of the more emergent areas that we'll see at the beginning of this year, where we're linking some kind of like semantic understanding to these reconstructions. So, if we can monitor and see and reconstruct a given location and time, and we know if something is not set up to end well, I think that this is a area that will be. I know of startups that are offering these services as of now.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a similar question. I think is the same answer as, can Gaussian splatting-based digital twins be used as a foundation for AI-driven compliance auditing systems in industrial environments?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think that it's overwhelmingly likely that we will see that before the end of this year and potentially imminently.
Very cool.
Yeah. Oh, I have another example. Sorry, I just realized it's still a black slide. But nope, it's not this one. They look exactly the same. This slides. But here's another capture from Christoph Schindler as well, also captured with a single Sony camera. And I think this took him a couple hours to make.
While we're watching this, someone asked much earlier in the stream, are these webinars available online? Yes, these are all recorded and will be available to watch in replay on YouTube. And then, Michael, you're streaming this to your YouTube as well, so it'll be available there.
Yes. If you are interested in learning more about Gaussian splatting, I try and create content about where it's being used out in the world at my channel, which is just Radiance.
And LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn as well. Yes. But yeah, this is crazy. This is legitimately a single camera that's doing this, and we can get a sense as to the level of fidelity that is achievable today, even.
Someone asked a question, and I'm not sure exactly what they mean. They said, how much are these type of visualizations worth in these industries?
I think it's a little bit hard to quantify that as of right now, though I can definitely say in like the geospatial industry, there seems to be a high value ascribed to them, because essentially it's helping them actually understand the space in which they are operating in and being able to actually derive more meaningful insights about the world. So in the case of like, say a natural disaster or something like this, if a sign is washed away or something is changed over a given period of time, it's a lot easier to locate and understand what a space should look like. And on the construction side, I think that a lot of these things will increase in value over time, where, as these buildings continue to be built and documented, as things need to be serviced or maintenanced, the value will also prove itself, I think, there. But it's hard to quantify, more explicitly the direct value or the explicit value.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer for it. Another question for you. What is the best way to do large-scale Gaussian splatting, like 10,000 images plus?
Yeah, I would say that you're definitely ingesting from the data from like a drone then, or something that has a capability of traveling that distance in a reasonable amount of time. There's also some interesting drones that are coming out that have 360 cameras on them, which are letting you ingest more information more rapidly about a flight path. And then from there, I'd also recommend putting it into something that can handle that scale. Whether that is something like FVDB or the unscented transform, or if there's other platforms, just making sure that they're able to handle that volume of input images. But it should basically, as long as you have sharp images and enough parallax, this technology can scale infinitely.
Sorry, I was muted because my dog was barking in the background, so I muted myself. So they had a second part of that question is they're also thinking in terms of software tools for training, like all those different ones that you showed earlier. Perhaps one of them.
So those ones that I showed earlier were more on like the downstream side of things, but there are definitely platforms like there is Postshot, there is Nerf Studio, which ILM highlighted recently. There's Lichtfeld Studio from Mr. Nerf, and there's a lot of very capable local training softwares. Though the same thing would work with like FVDB reality capture as well, where if you're really depending on like what your setup is. Some might work easier than others, or depending on what your goal is. Like, for instance, like FVDB is open source, whereas Postshot is closed source. And, depending on if you want to grow and build on top of it and develop on top, there's some options that will be better for you than others.
All right.
Yeah. And then with this in mind too, with GTC occurring like a couple of weeks or less from now, there's also going to be a couple of sessions at GTC surrounding Gaussian splatting as well, more on the physical AI side. But I figured I'd just compile a couple of the sessions for people here. And what is nice actually is that if you sign up, you can still sign up virtually and it's completely free. And then there's also all the on-demand sessions too. So if you wanted to look at any of the historical sessions about Gaussian splatting or NERF, you'd be able to do so too, if you're not able to attend in person. And one final thing that I wanted to show is that I actually am giving away a RTX Pro 6000 at GTC, which is a incredible GPU. I mean, it's got 96 gigabytes of VRAM. And yeah, so I'll be doing a giveaway at GTC. You don't need to attend GTC in person to enroll to it, but if you wanted to get a jump on the actual, I guess what you'd have to do, there is the QR code located right there for you. And following GTC, I will pick at random a winner, and you will get a Pro 6000.
That's amazing.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's going to be like a great giveaway, for people to have access to that level of compute.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a heavy duty, beefy GPU.
Yes. And finally, if you're interested to just, learn more about Gaussian splatting or be up to date with where it's being used out in the world, I'm trying to create a lot more content, or I am creating a lot more content about that over the course of this year. So there are a couple really exciting videos that are in the works right now, all about where Gaussian splatting is popping up and where it might make its way to as well.
Very cool. This was all such great information, Michael. Thank you so much. You want to go back to your slide really quick for your GTC giveaway? We'll just throw that up just one more time for others. As a reminder, he said you don't have to attend GTC to be eligible for this giveaway. Scan that QR code to sign up, and then after GTC, Michael will be picking at random someone to win this awesome RTX Pro 6000. So really cool. All right. So if we didn't get to your question today, there were so many good ones. I tried our best to put them in when we could, but we do have a Discord. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. It's going to cover our faces. This is our Discord, discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. Extend the conversation over there. We are available on LinkedIn as well. And I'm going to end out with talking a little bit more about GTC. So GTC is coming up. It is a week from this upcoming Sunday. We're kicking off with workshops on March 15th, and then the conference extending all the way until the 19th. We are taking over downtown San Jose. There is going to be lots of different venues that you get to experience the great stuff that NVIDIA has for you and all of our partners and our collaborators. So Jensen will also be giving his keynote in a nice big stadium. So if you're attending in person, you can try to get to that. Some passes have sold out, but there are day passes left. And again, if you want to attend virtually, that is completely free. So scan this QR code, register, get to see all of the cool stuff that's going on. Here's a little double click on the keynote. So this is what you can register for if you're coming in person and you already have your pass. You can actually see Jensen give his keynote live on stage March 16th at 11 a.m. at the SAP Center. And then we have a physical AI developer meetup. So if you want to have a drink, a couple bites to eat with us, nerd out on all of the cool stuff physical AI, then March 19th, that's Wednesday, March 19th, 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 at the Signia by Hilton in the Regency Ballroom. We'll be hanging out there. And then finally, we will level up with our OpenUSD certification. So if you've been joining us on Mondays, we've been doing an OpenUSD office hours where we're getting you ready to be OpenUSD certified. We need more experts certified in OpenUSD to help us with these physical AI pipelines. So we have 3 courses. They are, again, completely free, 6 weeks of Learn OpenUSD courses that are available and they're open source. They get you ready for certification. If you're attending in person, you can take the exam in person. There is a voucher where you might be eligible to take the exam for free, or at the very least get a 25% discount, which you can also use virtually too. So scan that QR code to complete the voucher application form. There is the link for the free trainings, which we love. All right. Michael, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to learn so much more about Gaussian splatting and all of the work that you get to be integrated into. So thank you again. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we let go today?
No, I think that really was everything. You know, I'm really just excited to see, lifelike 3D kind of proliferate through the world. And, hopefully, we as the end user will just have the world around us be as lifelike as we experience it. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and we'll leave off with this. Kleeman says, big fan of yours, Michael. I've been following your work for a bit. So you have lots of different fans in the chat that were watching you live today.
Yeah, thank you, Clemens. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. We'll see you at GTC. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.